What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Get Over Yourself podcast, a podcast dedicated to self development, self improvement, and helping you achieve the goals that you've laid forth in your life. I'm your podcast host, Brandon Davis, and for everyone who is watching today's episode, as you can see, we have a new friend joining us on the episode today, George Warren. So, George, thank you for hopping on today's episode of the Get Over Yourself podcast with us. Just real quick so everyone can get to know you, give us a couple fun facts about yourself and then we'll jump into it.
Oh, fun facts. Hey, Brandon, it's great to be here. I'm very excited and grateful for the invitation. The first thing to say is that I live in the mountains in North Wales. So I'm looking out the window now, and there's hills, forests, and lots of sheep as well. Although I grew up in the middle of London, in the big city. Fun facts: I have swum in the the Antarctic and the Atlantic Oceans. Down in Antarctica, and also in the pools of water underneath Mount Everest. I'm a big advocate of safe cold water swimming, and I've swum across between two continents, from Europe to Asia, in Turkey.
Well, I dare to say those are pretty exciting facts. This guy has done a lot of cool experiences, everybody. And as you'll get to see in the episode, he's going to share about some of the experiences that he's lived inside of his life and kind of how it started shifting his mindset so he could cultivate more happiness and do some of the things he was passionate about rather than just working himself to death like many people on this earth do. So, guys, with all that being said, let's jump into today's episode. So, George, to kind of kick everything off, as we were talking before we started recording the podcast and whatnot, you mentioned that at one point in your life, you're working a giant corporate sales job and that you weren't feeling satisfactory in it anymore after doing it for quite some time. And you kind of needed to take a sabbatical, take a leave of absence so you could kind of figure out your life. Can you let the listeners know a little bit about that experience that we went through and a little bit about what you learned?
Yeah, sure. So I kind of fell into like a lot of people can do in their 20s. You sort of fall into a job, right? It pays, it's quite interesting, and then that's kind of all I needed in my 20s, just the regular paycheck. And it happened to be at a really cool sort of boutique, sort of startup travel company, luxury travel company. And I love people. I love different cultures. I love exploring. So the travel has always been something I'm really passionate about. I'm a big advocate that travel helps break down barriers and helps us with empathy, which we need a lot more of at the moment. So I enjoyed it, and I did very well at it because I like people and I like helping people, and I think I think good managers and good salespeople are pretty good listeners, and I think like people more than anything, like helping people. So I became pretty successful at that. I was a sales director, promoted to quite a lot of seniority quite quickly, and in that sort of startup environment, you can learn a lot and go through a lot and develop a lot very quickly. But then it got sort of 8, 9 years later, I started realizing that I felt a bit stuck and a bit trapped, and I started to feel I sort of fell out of love with travel, and I started falling more curious about people and about how to really help people at a profound way. And at the same time, I started re-exploring my values and my purpose, and I started to feel quite stuck, a bit trapped, a bit stifled, and just a bit worried that I'm really successful here in this company, in this industry, but how can I ever be as successful in another company or another industry? I felt kind of stuck, and I didn't back myself enough to be a success in a different company or a different industry. And it was working with a coach and taking some time off to really think things through, clear my head, and connect with my own confidence. That was the energy for that transition, that change into what I do now, which is largely coaching.
And when you got into this state of mind or this mentality of like, okay, I need sort of a shift in my life right now, you kind of fell out of some of your passions and you said, I don't really know what's going on. I don't know why I'm not as engaged as I once was with the things I love, but something kind of needs to change for me to start feeling normal again. And I feel like that's a big thing. And as you mentioned, you were in your 20s at this time. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So I think that's a big thing a lot of people in their early adult life go through. They kind of get this job and they start working because they simply need to provide for them or their families. Like that's the typical step. Once you hit adulthood, you're kind of on your own and you got to go for it. But I think that's a big thing we see in today's society is you start working and you don't know exactly why you're working there. You don't know what you're truly passionate about. You don't know what kind of dreams you want to chase. You're there solely because of money for the most part. Obviously there's other benefits that you enjoyed from your job originally, but for the most part you're there to provide a living for yourself. And maybe if this is too hard of a question to answer, you can kind of go around it, but at what point in your life did you start thinking like, okay, I don't feel as connected to myself as I once did. I don't feel connected to my dreams and ambitions as much as I once did.
Well, there's so many ways I could answer that, and there wasn't really one sort of lightning bolt eureka moment for me. This was something that manifested itself over quite a lot of months, and I'm grateful for my friends and my support networks for being able to talk this through, and especially um, working with a coach, and then taking a professional qualification in coaching where you need to practice being coached a lot. It really helped me figure a lot of things out about myself. And in a way, you know, one way that I talk about coaching is like an archaeologist would sort of dust away and find something. In a way, what I think a good coach does is help someone dust away the cobwebs, dust away the unhelpful chatter, self-limiting beliefs to get to the core identity of who that person is, what they really want. And with that comes a beautiful realization, and lots of energy and satisfaction, or so my theory goes. So, to answer your point, it was more a question that I think in my guts and in my heart, and I think my body, I was holding a lot of stress physically, a frustration that was being felt physically, and yet my cognitive head was, George, you've got a mortgage to pay. George, you can't do this. George, stay here, pick up the paycheck. And so it was something of a head versus body, a logic versus emotional um, discord, or a sort of disunity. So I decided the thing to do was to just give myself some perspective and objectivity. So I decided to take a sabbatical, and just took a break from work for 6 months. And you know, all the things I wanted to do involved adventures that I knew would change me, would challenge me, would give me a lot of thinking time. So I like to try and think of the scariest things I can think of, and then do them, and then become more confident as a result. So a lot of my approach to confidence is around immersive therapy. Just doing the thing that is quite scary, and then knowing you'll be all right, and then progressing from there. Hence, doing interesting things like taking up stand-up comedy or going swimming in Antarctica. But also, at the time, there was a real strong narrative in the US and UK Western media, a strong Islamophobia, anti-Islam sentiment, and I didn't really believe it. So I thought, why don't I go and see what a lot of the Islamic world is like myself, and as opposed to believing what some um, you know
News agency is telling you.
exactly some news agency is sort of pumping into our consciousness. Let's go and figure it out. So I bought a bike, and I wasn't very confident on the bike. I only really took to cycling in my 20s. So I was kind of making up for lost time. Took a bike, took a tent, and a one-way flight ticket to Tajikistan, to the capital of Tajikistan, which is called Dushanbe, in the heart of the Islamic world. So that's around sort of Kyrgyzstan, just above Afghanistan, and I decided to sort of make my way on my own through the mountains, and connecting with the local scenery and people and culture, and experiencing Islamic culture and hospitality firsthand. So yeah, that was a cool experience. Which, whether it's cycling for 8 to 10 hours a day in the mountains, or I then went to Nepal and hiked for 2 months around Everest and Annapurna. I'm big into getting outdoors, but also giving yourself time to think. And you're sitting on a bike 8 to 10 hours a day, hiking, meeting people is a great way to learn about yourself. And it gave me some distance from the work, from the problems, from the career, from that email, cycle I was in. Sometimes people refer to their careers as like a treadmill or a production line. And I think maybe if this speaks to some of your listeners, but sometimes if we're in a job and it pays our bills, that's the path of least resistance. It's easier to stay than it is to think, oh, what do I really want to do, and how can I transition to my career, or what skills, or how can I find a job with more meaning or purpose. So I didn't want to be sort of sucked in to a career that didn't really speak to who I really am and what I really wanted out of my life. So giving myself that distance and objectivity and that time to think was a very valuable investment, and great way to keep fit.
Now, George, that's a pretty unique experience that not many people here on this earth can say that they are able to do. Go up and leave your job for 6 months and just say, I'm going to kind of figure out who I am, experience new things, experience new cultures, foods, religions, get in my own headspace and think, okay, what do I actually want inside of my life? And for you, that was like your do or die. If I stay at my job any longer, I'm probably going to go bonkers, right? You had to get out there and experience something different. What kind of strategies would you suggest for the audience listening today who may be in a situation very similar to where you were at? They know that the job they're currently working or the path they're going on isn't going to bring them the most joy in the long run. Maybe right now it's fulfilling their needs with monetary value, they're learning great skills, but at the end of the day they know it's not something they want to do long term. What strategies would you suggest for somebody in that situation?
So there's so many things popping up that I'll just I'll share a few and see what else emerges. I think one would be slow down. I call my newsletter "Slowing Down" because, if anything, um, so much of working life, of corporate life, of our careers, we spend hurrying up, trying to get more done, trying to optimize ourselves, trying to be more efficient, looking for hacks, trying to always level up to the next sort of pay level, the next if I only earn X amount of dollars a year, then I'll be happy. Or if I only make partner. And I think the broad scope of certainly a lot of our parents' generations, if I don't understand it, would be get a job in your 20s, work hard for 30 or 40 years, and then retire, and then enjoy.
Then I'll be happy. Yeah.
Then you get to enjoy your life. But very sadly, that doesn't happen to a lot of people. And I think if I can make a broad generalization around generations, what I'm experiencing with millennials and Gen Z is a sort of renegotiation of that. Well, actually, I prefer to carve out a career on more on my own terms, where I can work more flexibly, maybe work more remotely, and bring in some more of that satisfaction earlier into my career, more meaning and more purpose, as opposed to just slogging my guts out for 30 to 40 years and then enjoying myself. So when we slow down, we 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 do less doing and we do a bit more being. And I think the way we learn, the way we grow as people, is when we slow down. We go for that walk, we meditate, we check in with what's going on for us internally under the hood. I think, thanks to various reasons, we're in a culture of being more efficient, doing more, optimizing, constantly pressing the speed up on the treadmill to the point where people get burnt out and exhausted and frazzled and break down and anxious, and things start collapsing. So more than anything, I would find ways to reflect, whether that's journaling, whether that's checking in with trusted people who are good listeners and who won't try and fix you or tell you what to do. If you've got the luxury, I would recommend working with a therapist or a coach. I think both of those professions are very valuable, and as part of my energy for coaching is because it is transformational work that really works and it really helps people. And I think, the other thing, maybe something of a more pragmatic exercise would be, as you are slowing down, as you are reflecting, just notice those stories you're telling yourself. Like I said, you'll never be a success outside of the travel industry. You'll never get as good a gig as this. You'll never earn as much money as this. All of these were stories that I was telling myself that a fearful, protective part of my psyche was creating to keep me safe. It's that comfort zone that erodes our dreams, that eats away at our dreams and our ambitions. So notice the stories that you're constructing yourself. Notice the assumptions, noticing the self-limiting beliefs. And in whatever way, once you start noticing them, you start to realize, oh, hey, that's just a thought. That's not me. You have some objectivity to it. And you can decide, actually, that's just an unhelpful thought as opposed to a belief. So a big part of the coaching work I do, we look at these sorts of sort of unhelpful thought patterns around assumptions, challenges, and beliefs that aren't serving us.
And I've mentioned this before on the show, George, but when you put yourself in a situation where you can grow, you start to unlock different things inside of your head that you may not have known were there before. And I appreciate what you just mentioned about another word you can use for the terms you were saying is limiting beliefs, right? You were trying to convince yourself, I can't work any other job. I'm only going to be successful at this one. I can't go and travel because I won't be making the money I need to live. I can't do this or I can't do that. We start putting these limiting beliefs inside of our head because we got comfortable. And there's this amazing quote where there's no growth in the comfort zone and there's no comfort in the growth zone, right? You can't grow when you're stagnant in your life, when you're living every single day the exact same way. But it's also not going to be comfortable when you are growing. You're going to learn things about yourself that you don't like, that you do like, but is very hard to achieve. You're gonna feel in a completely different state of mind. And so, going back into your practical slow down, your practical let's relax and kind of reflect and meditate about who we really are, what we really want to do with our lives. Personally, for you, George, how is slowing down rather than, I also like your example of clicking up the treadmill a million times so it goes faster and faster, right? Where has slowing down been a powerful impact inside of your life currently? And how can people start practicing that more in their lives, seeing as how we do live in this fast paced society where everything is go, go, go 24/7?
Well, yeah, it's a lovely question. I wanted to come back to that quote because I admire it and I don't quite agree with it. I think, what was it? There's no growth in the comfort zone. Yeah. There's no comfort in the growth zone. And I'd add an initially to that. I'd say there's no comfort in the growth zone initially because I think and I don't know whether this is just living the mindset of a coach and being in the professional network of hundreds of amazing coaches and teaching coaching as well. But I've got comfortable in the growth zone. And I think part of that is carving out time for myself to check in with myself, going for a walk, journaling, working with my own coach and supervisors. And in order in all I know about adult learning theory, we learn not by having someone tell us what to do, and not just by doing it and doing it until the wheels come off, but doing it, thinking about it, reflecting, synthesizing our knowledge. Okay, so what might I do next
Doing
time?
it for meaning.
Yeah, but doing it and just giving yourself time to make meaning of it. So, I started off coaching. I was rubbish. I was absolutely rubbish, Brandon. When I started as a coach, new career, moved to the countryside. Um, I couldn't give my coaching away. I couldn't find people to do it for free to, and I'm glad I didn't panic and just sort of take another sort of safe job that wasn't really what I do. But I just backed myself, really. I just said, look, I want to give this the best shot I can, because what a big thing for me is picturing forward to the old man I'm going to be, hopefully it's sort of 70, 80, moustache has gone a bit grey, maybe a bit heavier. but looking back on a satisfying life well lived. And it was that checking in. I don't want to have any regrets when I'm sort of 70, 80 years old. And I don't want to say, oh, I just wish I'd just taken that opportunity. So checking in with the future version of myself and not wanting to have any regrets has been the sort of push into the swimming pool that I needed to leave that job and sort of follow my heart, follow my passion into coaching. So in terms of what to do, I would say, yeah, surround yourself with people who will provide a space for you to talk, and who will listen and who will not try and judge you or shame you or um, put their baggage onto you or to try and fix you. And whether that's friends, trusted relatives, co-workers, find people you can trust and who you can really be real with, who will hold that space for you. And you know, certainly for me, where I get my energy from is people and learning and exploration, and whether that's because of the values I hold or not, I'm not quite sure. But I would say, if you are in a job that you're not digging, it doesn't need to be as extreme as walking in, quitting, and starting from totally nothing. It might be, just speaking to people who are doing some interesting things, and surrounding yourself with that energy of people who are thinking differently or talking in a way that's helpful to you. It might be that you take some free courses online or book off a half-day holiday and go and volunteer or shadow someone doing some work. Um, I think there's this sort of idea and myth that we need to know exactly what our calling is, and we need to find a job with joy and love and purpose. And I think yes, that's possible for some, but unrealistic for others. And I think a way that you can hedge your bets is to give yourself space, give yourself some objectivity. If you can, spend some time with your phone off, with notifications off, where you're not checking your emails, where you're not in work modes, and where you can do your best thinking. And whether that's a case of sampling some other careers or dipping your toe into other activities, interesting stuff. I'm sure will come of that. But if you've got your foot to the pedal and you're trying to do the whole time, and it's all action, 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 I would beware the attraction of action. And I would, so much of what I speak about, um, it seems sort of revolutionary to do nothing or to slow down or to give yourself a day with your phone off. But this is the sort of wisdom that is coming out of not only thousands of years of sort of Buddhist and Eastern religion, but also coming out of neuroscience from the science of happiness and people studying contentment and well-being.
No, that's a beautiful summary of kind of everything we've talked about today, George. Kind of reflecting on why it's important to slow down inside of our lives and some practical instances where we can actually apply it. Because I feel like so many times you listen to podcasts or you listen to these or you read these great books and they give these crazy, crazy solutions on how they fix their life, but it's simply impractical for many of the average citizens, many of the average day workers, people who are just trying to get by. And I really like what you said, because when people can slow down and when people can be more mindful of their surroundings and set themselves up for a state of being that isn't so hurried and rushed 24/7, but can actually think about what they're trying to accomplish, those changes are able to take pass. I've noticed personally inside of my own life that as I'm going incredibly fast, which I think it is a byproduct of the society we live in, we're always on the move. When I do take time to reflect about what I'm doing, when I have sort of, it's kind of cliche, but when I have sort of these shower thoughts, when I'm just relaxing a little bit, some of my best ideas come to me. Some of my best dreams come to me and what I actually want to do inside of my life. So I can 100% attest to exactly what you're saying, George. And just to close out today's episode and our great conversation we've been having, I want to ask you this one final question that I ask every single person that I interview on the podcast. And it's this, George. If you were able to speak to the entire world, every single person in the world could hear you at this exact moment, what piece of advice or experience would you share with them, and why would it be?
So the things that come to my mind are probably three concise principles or ideas. One, people are fundamentally good. That's a very helpful mindset. People are fundamentally good and kind and creative if you let them be. The second would be often the solution to what you need isn't buying something more or needing something more or taking something. Often it's the solution, the answer that you need is already within you if you just connect with it and let it surface. And I think the other encouragement would be an encouragement that life is nuanced, life is messy, and things aren't binary, things aren't always black and white. And I think a lot of the ills of society, of politics, of division, of injustice, could really benefit from some of those basic core human skills of listening, of not judging, of seeking to understand, of leading with kindness, and with appreciating that things are murky and nuanced. And to be a human is to be murky and nuanced and illogical and emotional. We are emotional mammals. We need connections and people in our tribe. And it somehow feels that a lot of elements of society and across the globe, we've lost sight of that.
Thank you for that, George. What a beautiful wrap up to today's episode. Everyone, thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Get Over Yourself podcast. As always, if you ever want to reach out to me or George, our links are going to be in the description down below. Check out that if you need to reach out to us. And guys, at the end of the day, just remember, it'll all be okay. Just take a step back and start finding small areas inside of your life that you can hit slower on the treadmill with.